guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this one, I wanted to focus in on something that is absolutely crucial for the New York Jets moving forward. It's something that has to change. It's practices, practice habits, how the Jets go about doing things. You know, over these last, I don't even know. I mean, during the entire Saleh era and even trickling into the Gase era, it seemed like a lot of people had issues with how the Jets went about practicing, right? I mean, there has been numerous people complaining about the Saleh practices, talking about how it's more of a lax environment. It's not really detailed focused. It's more so big picture focused, which is really why I think we saw a lot of the same issues every single week, right? Penalties, undisciplined play, poor angles being taken to the football on the defensive side of the football, just weird things that would just pop up every single week. I mean, I remember doing recap videos. I remember talking to, a lot of Jets fans, reading comments saying, we're doing the same thing every single week. We are beating ourselves every single week. I mean, there's so many games that I can, just think back on, especially in those first 2 years with Saleh, before we had like a lot of the bigger name guys. Specifically talking in that like Mike LaFleur era, where it's just, if the Jets just did one thing differently, if they just fixed the two issues that went wrong every single week, we would probably be winning these football games. But they continue to pop up, they continue to rear their ugly head, and what's done is done, and the Jets have now got to move forward. And I think a lot of those issues stemmed from poor practice habits. But with Aaron Glenn coming in, could this be an opportunity where the Jets can have a complete 180 here? And I think the answer is yes. This is not me trying to be, an overly optimistic fan here, but I think if we just look at the facts and understand who Aaron Glenn is, looking at his resume, looking at, who he's worked under, I think maybe we can draw some comparisons here to how future Jets practices look. Voluntary OTAs, of course, are underway, but these practices aren't padded. There's obviously going to be certain positions that shine because of the current structure. We'll see the changes that take place when pads come on. There's really only so much that you can take away from the on-field stuff in this section in May, early June, right? Mandatory minicamp, I believe, kicks off June 10th through the 12th. We'll see what happens there, but let's take a look at Aaron Glenn's resume. So first things first, he's a former player, and he was coached by literally one of the best coaches of all time in Bill Parcells, and one of Parcells' qualities about him was the practice style. Here's a quote from Bill Parcells' practices. Parcells' coaching style was characterized by high standards and accountability. His influence extends beyond his own coaching achievements to those he mentored. The culture he created was focused on leadership and mutual respect. Me and Tyson from Let's Talk Jets Radio have talked a lot about this, really since Aaron Glenn is hired. Tyson always is harping on the Kotite era and kind of the transition out of the Kotite era to the Parcells era, which was, again, a complete 180 here. Just the accountability, the discipline, the hard-nosed mentality that Parcells brought with him, and it completely changed the culture. Now, I'm not necessarily comparing Robert Saleh to Rich Kotite, but I think it's more so a representation of, hey, things can change, the culture can change. Now, speaking of culture changes, we can talk about the Detroit Lions, right? I mean, my entire life, Detroit has always been picking top 10. They've always been missing the playoffs. They've always, been finishing last in the NFC North. They're always losing games. Not anymore. Not anymore. Detroit is a powerhouse. Detroit, offensive line, quarterback plays, skill position players, well coached, great culture. Guys are playing with each other. They're elevating each other, right? They're not pointing the finger at one another, right? Detroit's culture is awesome. It is awesome. Here's a really, really awesome quote in regards to Campbell's practices. One of the benefits of having a former player as a head coach is the built-in psyche. Dan Campbell knows things get repetitive in training camp. He also knows the Lions need work. The little things, like a night practice instead of the usual 8:30 a.m. starts, can help change up the pace and keep the focus where it needs to be. Campbell's always thinking about things like that. He knows when to push and when to change things up, much like Monday night's practice. His practices are described as physical, but not too too physical where the players are feeling beat up and lethargic when it gets to game day. I mean, when you talk about practice structure, Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions are literally up in the top, like the upper echelon of the NFL on how they do things. Baltimore is up there as well, but you know, it really seems like Detroit has the practice schedule, the offseason schedule, game preparation down pat. And of course, Campbell being the former player, Aaron Glenn being the former player, Aaron Glenn learning and being a part of that Lions culture, I'm going to assume here, not a foregone conclusion, but it's common sense that some of those qualities are going to trickle into the Jets locker room. Let's take a look at another Aaron Glenn mentor here in Sean Payton. Payton's practices have been described as calculated, detailed, weakness focused. There's a real focus on the offensive side of the football of just doing your job, right? Here are your tasks, now go complete them. As far as the defensive side of the football goes, it's all about the physicality. It's never about taking plays off. It's never about finding the easy way out, looking for shortcuts. No, it's tough, it's long, it's physical defenses, right? And again, looking at the Sean Payton practices as a whole, we can take a look at the culture change that took place going from, ironically enough, Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton. Here's a really interesting quote from Jerry Jeudy. He basically came in saying how everything was going to be different around here. He said we would be working harder and doing things different and to his expectations. He brought his energy into the facility and onto the field where it takes only one practice and watching Payton stop a drill to see where the work and expectations are going. So in other words, the Jets culture has been non-existent since, I want to say, the end of the Todd Bowles era. That is such a long time. It's time for a change, right? And Aaron Glenn, someone who, much like Dan Campbell, a former player, someone who's worked and learned under some of the best coaches in football, but also some of the best practice coaches in football as well. The best game planners, Sean Payton, Parcells, again here, Dan Campbell. I mean, we could throw in Ben Johnson, new head coach of the Chicago Bears. We'll see what happens there. But I mean, the talk coming out of Chicago right now is everything is just so focused on the little things. Ben Johnson has that team just, as of right now, again, it's early, it's May. Training camp hasn't even started yet. We haven't seen a Ben Johnson coach game, but the buzz coming out of Chicago right now, things are completely different. It's a lot of the same stuff that we're hearing from the Jets, right? No leaks, no distractions, no finger pointing. It really seems like the cultures are being flipped on their head in, again, New York and Chicago here. So I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited. I'm really hoping that these practices are different. They change compared to what we've seen and heard over the last 4 years here with Saleh and Ulbrich. Getting away from this kind of, and Nathaniel Hackett too, by the way, getting away from this kind of relaxed approach, this, we'll fix it eventually. No, accountability, discipline, physicality, that stuff needs to be implemented immediately. And it seems like Aaron Glenn is the right guy for the job here. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks so much, and as always, go Jets.